restaurants and integrate white factories and force themselves into that which the white man has set up. They should use this same ingenuity to show the black people how to pool our wealth and set up something of our own. And then we won't have to force our way into his anymore. One more thing I would like to point out concerning what he said about 125th Street. We don't waste our time on 125th Street, but you can reach more people in the street who want to change than you can in the bourgeoisie society, the bourgeoisie church, and the bourgeoisie circles. Our program is directed toward the man in the street. So we spend our time in the street, and what we do with that man, instead of trying to change the white man in your mind and make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
Hello and good evening. Welcome to another edition of Community Crossfire. Tonight I'll be sitting in again for none other than Norman Oliver. My name is Ugundi Jacobs, and I'm glad to be here. Norman called me, told me he was getting a lot of phone calls saying the young man you had on the show last week hosting, he did it so nice he must do it twice. So I'm back again, hoping that I could deliver some more information that is going to be helpful and impactful to all of those that's out here watching us. As usual, Community Crossfire's mission is to deliver all the hot topics, some underground news, and some national news, and we have a full lineup of that for you tonight. We're going to have two guests joining us tonight. We have with us one, Ebony Wilmore, who's going to be discussing the impact of children of substance abuse parents. And we also have none other than Mr. Sam Guy, Mr. Sam the Brains Guy, who's going to come on and have a conversation with us about the headline news of Senator Coons voting to oppose President Obama's appointee to the Civil Rights Division. So we have a full show on tap for you tonight. Before I go into the interview, I'd like to send out a few condolences to a few of my childhood friends. We all have lost a loved one this week. We have Donald Poon lost his grandfather, Mr. Pat. Another good friend that we grew up with in the neighborhood, Coley Hobson, lost his mother. Lee Coleman lost his mother. And I lost my aunt Paulette Jacobs, my grandmother's oldest daughter and my mother's oldest sister. So it's a lot of pain in the community, but please keep us in prayer and hope that we stand strong and get through this together. You know, when families get together, good or bad, there's no telling how the outcome is going to be. So just keep us lifted, and we appreciate all the love, and I'd like to send my condolences out to those brothers as well. So first up is joining me is Miss Ebony Wilmore. I'd like to welcome her to the show. How you doing tonight, Miss Ebony?
I'm good. I'm really good. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
You know, I had Facebook is powerful.
It is. It is.
And I noticed one of the posts you had posted on Facebook concerning a paper that you had completed in school, titled "The Impact of Children of Substance Abuse Parents."
Yes.
That's a heavy topic.
It is.
And it's an even heavier situation on both those parents and those children. Tell us, how did you come up with this, and where did it all come from?
Well, the whole matter of it is very personal to me.
Okay.
And I've always had a passion for children, and specifically children of substance users. And that's why I decided to make that my focus. I am a student at Springfield College in Human Services.
Okay.
And that's my focus and will continue to be. My focus is helping those children.
Right.
And what I noticed was that there was so many resources, so much counseling, so many things made available to recovering addicts, and not much help or assistance made available, counseling made available to their children.
Right.
So I thought it was very important to first make people aware of it, do the necessary research, and let people know what's going on and why this particular group of children needs to be attended to.
Okay. Now, I was looking at some of your topics. Can you give us an overview of some of the topics that you discussed in your paper?
Yes. First of all, the children of substance-using parents are impacted physically, and there's two parts to that, and we'll get into it. They're also impacted psychologically by the substance use of their parents. And lastly, they're impacted behaviorally. And those are just three components, but mixed in there are other ways of, yes, there's emotional, there's, there's all kinds of things that's mixed in there, and we'll get into that. But those three are, the overview of the entire thing.
Okay. Now, locally, the kids that you can tangibly put your hands on, do you have any run-ins in terms of knowing how it really affects those kids? Or
Definitely.
Is this all through research?
Well, what I'm finding out is that in Delaware alone, and this is very important for people to know, 18,588 grandparents are taking care of their grandchildren.
Wow.
That's a big number.
Wow.
So that means there's something going on. There's something that, we as a community aren't aware of in our family, and in building our family structure.
Right.
There's a lot that's lacking, family values. There's a lot that's missing, obviously, if grandparents have to step in and continue to take care of generation after generation.
Right.
And then, that brings even a bigger matter and speaks volumes as to how big of a generational gap there is and can be between a grandparent and a grandchild.
Okay.
And, as a result, we end up having a lot of issues with the children. If they're not able to communicate with grandmom and granddad, then ultimately they end up in, the care of the streets or the wrong hands, and, bigger things can happen.
Okay. Well, I would say, the modern times, the 21st century, the age on grandparents has seemed to be reduced from what we used to remember as older grandparents. Now we have grandparents that's early 30s?
Oh, yeah.
Early 40s, so the gap may not be as wide as it once was, but how do you think that affects the kids as well?
Well,
having those younger age grandparents to kids, grandkids.
I think it affects them in a way such as you have a grandparent who might be 35, 35 years old, and that's realistic because, again, this is personal to me, so I know a grandparent can be 35 years old, 30 even, and they want to live their life. They want to live out their 20s, they want to live out their 30s, and they should be able to do so. But unfortunately, what happens is, babies have babies sometimes, and what happens is that grandparent doesn't necessarily, they're not ready, if you will, to be a grandparent. So a lot of times today even, you have grandparents who don't want to be called grandma. And that's a big deal to me. I had a huge discussion about how, what's wrong with being grand? Nobody wants to be grandmom. Nobody wants to be grandpa. Call me, my mom, which is fine. Yeah, my mom, papa. And then even sometimes, they're calling them by their first names and nicknames. First names and nicknames because they don't want to, be a grandmom or grandfather. So then there comes in that respect issue there, because there's a lot in the name. There's a lot in the name. So you have a child who, if I can't look to you as my grandmother or my grandfather, and I'm calling you, Tata, whatever your name is, a nickname or something like that, then, there's a lack of respect that comes into play. So then you kind of miss the wisdom factor.
Most definitely.
That communication doesn't take place that used to take place a long time ago when we were able to sit at our grandparents' feet and collect wisdom. We don't get that now because we have a 35-year-old. You have a 35-year-old grandmother who wants to live her life.
On a lighter note, and this is a serious topic, but on a lighter note, I remember hearing one of the comedians, I believe it was either Bernie Mac or not Robin Williams, the other gentleman.
Robin
Harris. He said that the kids, 15, grandmom, 35, grandma talking about, I ain't babysitting.
That's real.
I'm going out to the club too. So that's still what's going on today, and it really does have a terrible effect on how the kids are growing up with their learning, with their watching, how they're interacting with other kids. So it's terrible out here for that reason. But one thing I did learn and notice is that I thought, before I read your paper, that of course it was a large amount of those grandparents in the Black African community. Come to find out, it was 51% that were non-whites that were raising kids. So that was a staggering number that I was naive to, because we see so much of it within our community. Why do you think we have that misconception?
Well, because a lot of us don't look for that information. You know, people today still believe that there's more blacks that are poor and impoverished than whites. And that's not true. That's not true. Most of the people who are impoverished in North America, our country where we live, are white people. But we have to go seek that information for ourselves. See, we become so boxed into what's going on in our little circle. In our little circle, and it might be for different reasons. People sometimes are uncomfortable going to look for information, and they, become just kind of in a box and finding out what's going on in their own community and what's going on in their circle. And we have to break out of that, because with that comes a lot of false information, such as more black grandparents are taking care of their grandchildren than whites, and it's not true.
So let's go dig a little deeper. Let's go another layer and dig into the actual effects with kids in school.
Kids in school.
That's on that come from parents of substance abuse.
Well, a study's already been done that shows that children of substance users, they have more behavioral problems than children of non-substance users. So it's already been documented. Studies have already shown that this is true. And a lot of times questions arise as to why is this happening? But it's nothing complex, and that's what a lot of us tend to think. We think things are really deep, or like there's some chemical imbalance, or this kid needs Ritalin, and that's not true.
That's not true?
It's not true a lot of times.
Break it down for me.
The issue is simply this. I mean, if you're a child, and from birth, if your mother was an addict, and you were born into that,
as they used to say, crack babies.
Yes, crack babies. And in medical terms, they'll say it's called substance use disorder risk. So you're put at substance use disorder risk from the womb. And what tends to happen is when you break that child away from the parent, there's a detachment that happens, because that mother or that father becomes more consumed with their addiction and that drug. So their attention isn't on that child. So there's an emotional detachment first. So imagine the psychological harm that does on a child. So when a child gets into the school system, there's all kinds of peer pressure they're dealing with, because more than likely they've already been placed with a relative, probably their grandmother or not, or even an older sibling sometimes, who isn't financially ready, capable, or
so that adds another whole set of burdens.
Whole another set of burdens. So if you have a child who goes to school with peers who have this, and this, and their families are made up of a mom and a dad, and that child doesn't have either, there's a lot that goes on psychologically before they even hit the classroom. So they're not even able to focus on that. A lot of their focus is what's going on around them. This person got clothes for the first day of school, but I didn't get that, and they don't understand. So that brings us to the financial neglect piece. Which is always important. Financial is important with two-parent, grandparent, or
getting supported from somewhere else, that's a major piece, being able to take care of and provide for the kids.
Definitely.
What do you recommend is a good rehabilitation step and bringing that kid back to a wholesome state?
Mentorship. The same way we go out and we'll pick up a phone for our loved one to get them the help that they need if they say they need help, and they want to, begin the recovery process.
Right.
That's the same step we need to be taking for the child of that recovering addict. Pick up the phone, walk them through a recovery process, something similar as well, because they're suffering also.
Well, that comes into play, the trust issue. Because if the grandparents are taking care of the kids and they have a child who's on drugs, then finding someone to mentor them is going to be even more difficult, because they already have the trust issues of the kid not being able to have someone that's going to be consistent in their lives, that's going to provide for them the things that they're lacking. How can you work with that? How would that match?
Well, I think that what's important is that this is one thing, we come from a place where a generation that says, do as I say, not as I do.
And we know that's not right.
We know that's not right. So we've seen generations of people doing and telling us not to do.
Right.
And as a result, we had the 80s, and we had a huge crack cocaine epidemic, and it just began to spiral, out of control. And I think that with that came a generation that said, don't tell my business.
Okay.
So I don't think it's necessarily a trust factor or a trust issue when it comes to grandparents letting people in, but more of, I don't want my business put out there. And then there's also the element of shame.
Right.
Which is natural. Right. You don't want people to know what's going on. Yeah, you don't want people to know. So I think that we have to get over that and look at what's more important, and that's why
saving the child.
Exactly, which is saving the child, and I think that's why I wanted to make my first step awareness, because I think with people understanding what that child is enduring
on a day-to-day basis.
Instead of, boy, go sit down somewhere, ain't nothing wrong with you. And the school is constantly calling, the counselors are constantly calling, and they're telling you something's wrong. Ain't nothing wrong with him, he just bad. No, he lived with his auntie, and his shoes are wore down to the sole, and he's having problems. The kids are making fun of him, and he can't call his mom. So there's that detachment. I can't lay on mommy's shoulder when things are going on. So I think that we have to stop making everything, oh, he's just bad. Oh, she just hot. Or she's just gonna be like her mama, that kind of issue, and start to take a little bit more care in our children.
Yeah, those are some of the short-term situations. What are some of the long-term ramifications of this?
Long-term ramifications, a lot of times with adolescents who have parents who are substance users, they become what psychologists have called parental children, or the parental child, whereas they're unable to enjoy their teen life. They're unable to enjoy the normal things that come along with being an adolescent, because they become so consumed and so attached to what's going on with their parent. Whether they're an addict currently or a recovering addict, they become detached to their situation, wondering where mommy is, wondering where daddy is for days, or wondering, how can I make this better? Is it my fault?
So that reconciliation period is definitely a struggle.
It's a struggle, and it's ongoing. It's something just like an addict has to work on a day-to-day to keep the process going, one day at a time. It becomes also the struggle of that teen to keep that relationship going one day at a time, because a lot of times what happens is you have and this is another study that was done by the Massachusetts General Hospital. Their psych department did this. There was a situation where the mother becomes so engulfed in what's going on with her that the teen is totally neglected. and unable to make any kind of connection with the parent. And while the teen is trying to go through school and just do the right thing, just because, not because they're competing with their parent, but because they just want to do the right thing, the mother the mother would look at the child as if, oh, you're trying to be a good girl. Oh, you want to be a saint, that kind of thing. So there's constantly a struggle within the relationship, and that's one of the long-term ramifications.
Okay. Now, locally, is there any support groups or resources that those kids or parents that's dealing with those issues they can go to get some kind of help on a regular basis? Right now, there's still, I believe there's still Project Stay Free. That's closed. That's closed down.
Project Stay Free is closed down? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, right now what I would suggest is calling our local Ys, keeping them involved in things. The YMCA has been known to keep human services intact. So keeping in touch with our local Ys, social services, contacting them for any special needs, financial things that need to be done so that the children aren't suffering financially and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But one of the things I am going to do is launch my own charity so that when children, Angels of the Addict, so that when these children need something, whether it's school supplies, shoes, anything like that, they'll be able to come and get a certain amount. But one thing I want to be careful of is that it's going to the child. Because a lot of times, that's another part of the financial neglect piece. You don't know what's going to the child. So, I definitely want to do that.
Yeah. I think the best thing for a child in that matter, or any child, period, is to stay active. Keep them involved, keep them supported, keep them, in different activities and events and around different kind of people so that they can learn and grow and see that even though they come from a mistake, they can become something positive with themselves as well.
Yes, and that's what saved me.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay. All right.
yes.
All right. You're also a poet, correct?
I am.
Would you share to drop something for us before you leave out?
Sure.
Something short and sweet.
Something short and sweet. All right. Let's see. What am I going to do here? You didn't put me on the spot.
It's Community Crossfire.
Community Crossfire. I got to be ready. Oh my gosh. Let's see. All right. I got this one. It's called Where I'm From.
Great.
All right. And I'm looking here. Okay. I'm from the Garden of Eden, where the first queen was Eve. She was the woman who taught me to deceive and make men believe I held no tricks up my sleeve and make them believe I'm someone I am not. I got my wicked ways from the Delilah days, and I praise on Sundays regardless of what anyone says. I'm not a hypocrite, but a work in progress. I profess to be nothing more or less. My guess is that we judge to forget our own mess, yes, but where I'm from was the beginning of the process. So for me to address why most women regress and do not grow, we must first know where we're from. I come from the Garden of Eden, where the first queen was Eve. She was the woman who taught me to deceive and make men believe I held no tricks up my sleeve and make them believe I'm someone I am not.
Wow. Thank you very much for sharing.
No problem.
And thank you for coming on with the information that's needed. And we hope that we can reduce those numbers and change our community around. So again, Ebony Wilmore from Springfield University.
Thank you.
Congratulations. When do you finish?
I should be done in May 2015.
Okay.
2015.
It's your bachelor's?
Bachelor's. Bachelor's in Human Services.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to take a short break. And when I come back, I will be joined by none other than Sam, the Brains guy, to discuss the recent Chris Coons rejection, his vote on the Civil Rights Commission of Mr. Debo. We'll be right back.
In no education, and set up little stores, develop these stores into larger stores, develop this into an industry which creates job opportunities for whites. Since Lincoln was supposed to have freed the black man 100 years ago, and today the black man, according to the government economists, has spending power of $20 billion per year. We feel that with the black man spending $20 billion a year, not setting up any businesses, not creating any industry, not creating any job opportunities for his own kind, he's not in a moral position to point the finger today at the white man and tell the white man that he's discriminating against him for not giving him a job in factories that he himself set up. If the black man has $20 billion, and these so-called Negro leaders are such geniuses that they can integrate white restaurants and integrate white factories and force themselves into that which the white man has set up, they should use their same ingenuity to show the black people how to pool our wealth and set up something of our own. And then we won't have to force our way into his anymore. One more thing I would like to point out concerning what I said about 125th Street. We don't waste our time on 125th Street, but you can reach more people in the street who want to change than you can in the bourgeoisie society, the bourgeoisie church, and the bourgeoisie circles. Our program is directed toward the man in the street. So we spend our time in the street, and what we do with that man, instead of trying to change the white man in your mind and make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
Good evening and welcome back to Community Crossfire. Again, I'll be your host tonight, sitting in for Storm and Norman. My name is Ugandi Jacobs, and joining me, I have with me Mr. Sam, the Brains Guy. Do you mind if I call you that?
Just call me Sam.
Just call you Sam. Sam, I am.
All right, that'll work.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
All right.
Now, today's in the News Journal, there's a hot topic locally about Senator Coons sitting on the side of those rejecting President Obama's civil rights nominee for his civil rights division.
Right.
Now, Chris Coons is loved by many here locally. The black community comes out and supports him often. So him voting on this decision, and well, him voting on this decision, what do you think the impact will be for him moving forward? And just also, in your own words, give us a little insight as to what you think really took place.
Well, I guess when the president is appointing somebody who has to be confirmed, then everybody, all 100 senators, they get to vote the way they want to as to whether they support the president's nominee or they don't support the president's nominee. Now, normally, politics is party-based, so you would expect that the Democrats would support the president's nominee.
Right.
So that's the norm.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of abnormal in many ways.
Right.
I think that Coons made a decision. The way the story goes, supposedly he was lobbied by the FOP to vote against the guy.
All right.
And I guess in the balance, he's from a state that has over 20% African Americans, a state that voted for President Obama. Heck, Delaware voted for Jesse Jackson.
Right.
So Delaware is a state that there's a lot of concern about civil rights issues. So when he had to make a choice, as opposed, I guess he was more concerned about the 9,000 or so, however many members of the FOP versus people who are concerned about their civil rights. Now there's a big uproar about this. But the real tragedy, I think, in all of this is not getting caught up in who the person was and who they represented. One of the main issues is that a person who's an attorney is being retaliated against by Senator Coons and others representation of the client.
Right. Let me bring some of the community up to speed who may not have read the paper or anything. The gentleman who we're talking about, who was denied by the Chris Coons Senate vote, is an attorney who represented Abu Jamal, who was a convicted cop killer in Philadelphia. Now, he was a convicted cop killer in Philadelphia. Now, this goes back to basically him representing Abu Jamal by way of being on the NAACP.
Right, being part of the civil rights effort. I think it resulted in, instead of the death penalty, it ended up being a life sentence, ended up being the end result. But the key point is that attorneys just represent people.
Of all kinds.
That's right. So now when we start to talk about people being retaliated against because they represented clients in a country where people have the right to be represented,
right.
When you see that kind of stuff going on, that's a game changer nationally and locally. It's one thing, yeah, just that concept. It's one thing for people to politically support a person or not support a person. So just like the civil rights community supports the guy,
yes,
and FOP is against the guy, but for the sitting U.S. senator,
right,
to basically make it plain and clear that he has a problem with the attorney who's representing the guy, but acknowledging that he's fully qualified. That's why you basically have a whole generation in the black community of very few African-American younger lawyers, the ones younger than me.
Right.
There's very few of them involved in being out in the battlefield fighting for the civil rights for our community, because I've been a victim of this my whole life. I did it when I was young, and they retaliated against me my whole life. And the young people see that, and the young people in law school see what happened to this guy, so they know, okay, we can't represent anybody that the powers that be doesn't allow us to represent, or else our career is going to be interfered with.
Well, hopefully, when we put the phone numbers up later on in the show, maybe we can have a few attorneys to call in and get some of their input from it, you know. But Senator Carper, he voted with it.
Right.
And how do you feel will there be any backlash or support from him?
There shouldn't be any backlash, because opposing a person for who they represented, that's something that's very extreme in some regards. Now, there can be circumstances where maybe that makes sense. But that's very extreme.
Yeah. Well, I know last week I had on here on the show with us Ms. Alexandra Coppage, and she came on discussing the reestablishment of Wilmington's civil rights movement. So I'm anxious to see what the turnabout on this situation is going to be, if they're going to get involved with this. Is this something that they're going to get involved with immediately, or they're going to talk? You know, I'm trying to see what kind of legs are going to grow from this.
Yeah, the Wilmington Civil Rights Commission existed when I was on city council years ago. In fact, my first piece of legislation that I passed expanded the number of people on the Civil Rights Commission, and it also included the NAACP as one of the organizations that the city of Wilmington would interact with on civil rights issues. It's pretty interesting that the NAACP wasn't on the list of organizations back then.
Wow, that's pretty heavy. I think we should take a few phone calls to see what some of the viewers have to say about this.
Sounds good.
Good evening. Welcome to Community Crossfire. How can I help you?
Good evening, you Gundy, and good evening, Sam, Pastor D. Thank you so much for the topic.
Hey, beloved.
How you doing now?
I'm well, thank you. Listen, Sam, all day I have been extremely pleased by how you have made the public understand the nature, please excuse my son, of the retaliatory behavior of Senator Coons. However, I would beg both Ugundi and yourself to comment on the fact that the reality of it is the retaliatory nature of power in the state of Delaware does not limit itself to what is happening with Senator Coons. That is just an example. For instance, you have been a victim of this not just with regard to being an attorney, but people in position of power in Delaware. If they don't like Pastor D, then they'll retaliate against somebody else for being associated. And a number of critical issues to our community do not get addressed because of the retaliatory nature of power and politics in the state of Delaware. It's larger than the legal community.
Most definitely.
It's deeper than this particular issue. And I think that all of us at some point are subject to this, and we've got to fight it at every level. I'll hang up and listen to your responses.
Yes, Pastor D, I mean, I guess on that point, here's how the game works in Delaware. If there's an issue impacting the black community, and there's 5 people who need to be brought in that room because they know what they're talking about, most of the time when the black community goes to negotiate, the people who need to be there aren't there
at the table,
because the people on the other side of the table tell people who not to bring.
Right.
So you're right on point.
Those who's going to bring with the fight for the people.
So that's why we end up getting sold out most of the time.
Yeah. Well, I know I've experienced some of that on different issues as a concert promoter. You know, I could bring quote-unquote Michael Jackson to town, but if somebody say, man, that's Gundy's event, we don't fool with him like that, then they might not come. So it's always a, you know, cliquish type of situation, and this is what this turned out to be, which was unruly. Let's take another call. Thank you for calling.
Hello?
Hello. Thank you for calling.
Hello?
Can you turn your television down, please?
I can't walk, so I have a question I want to ask Mr. Guy.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
If someone get picked up for suspicious of robbery and they don't find no witness or nothing, how long can they hold him incarcerated for a crime that they can't find nothing, no witness, no nothing?
Thank you for your call.
Most of the time people are represented. One thing you can try is try to get the bail reduced if they're just holding them excessively. That's one like immediate step you could try. But obviously they should try to get the case dismissed. But an issue like that, you'd actually have to sit down and talk to an attorney one-on-one to get the details.
Yeah. Well, back to what we were discussing. John Roberts, he's the Chief Justice. He represented a killer years ago, and you never heard any backlash from him. Why do you believe that's the case?
Well, I mean,
why do you think?
I mean, it's pretty plain. Mm-hmm. You know, we live in a society where there's rules, but those rules don't apply to everybody. You know, so that happens all the time. That's nothing new. Everybody knows that.
Right.
So that's what everybody's working for, is a fair society where folks get treated equally.
Okay.
But there are 2 sets of rules in this state and in this country.
Such as?
That's it. I'm telling you, there's different rules with different people.
Okay.
Okay. Some are race-based, some are gender-based. But nah, you know, there might have been some people that opposed him.
Okay.
But he got in, didn't he?
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay.
Most definitely. I would like to possibly hear from Senator Coons himself. I know that he's made some pretty good leadway for the black community in years past. And it's been a lot of conversation locally in the news journal with people discussing their displeasures. I'm wondering how he's going to bounce back from this, being as though re-election is coming up. Will he still get the support, or will it be something that become his Achilles heel?
Well, it's a national issue. I mean, he's one of the 7 people whose picture they put up in the national news media as the Democrats who basically, you could say, are responsible for what has taken place.
Right.
And, you know, politics is a team sport, and he kind of abandoned the team that he's on.
Right. So that could have some damaging effects very soon.
Well, there's a lot of people who are really upset because, you know, the one thing that the black community and people that aren't in the black community care about as well are civil rights related issues.
Yes.
And so when it comes to destabilizing the effort to put some oomph behind the Department of Justice, you know, that doesn't make life safer for anybody. Look at all this stuff happening down in Florida where young people are just getting killed.
Right.
Well, the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice with the FBI can look into those type of things. So you need somebody running the Department of Justice who's not scared to do their job.
Yeah.
So when I hear there was an attorney who took on a tough case
Right.
and got involved in that and dug in and did the best that he could do, that's not a bad thing. That's the kind of person that you need running that department, because there's going to be resistance
Most
to
definitely.
people looking into civil rights violation. There's always resistance.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm anxious to see, because I do know that there is a difference between civil rights of today versus civil rights of yesterday. Civil rights of yesterday, they would roll up their sleeves and get to it. Civil rights of today do a lot more talking. Much more talking.
That's true, because I think there's some kind of event where Bill Clinton is coming to Delaware that Coons is sponsoring. I don't know when it is.
I believe it's on the 10th, March the 10th, down at the Chase Center.
Yeah,
now,
an
back
event
in the
like
day,
that? Yeah.
it would be
Boatload
hundreds
of
of
people.
thousands of folks down there boycotting, discussing their displeasures.
That's right.
I bet it won't be 100 people down there.
No. That's why folks feel comfortable disrespecting our community. It's like you can slap the black community upside the head. They won't do anything. They'll forget about it.
Yeah, let me take this next call. Thank you for calling.
Yeah, sorry, I had to call back. Y'all just doing so good, man. It's only popping, and I feel like I'm in the chair with you. I believe the event may be tomorrow, but this is a perfect example. Now, when Bill Clinton comes in, there will be, as Sam pointed out, a number of so-called black leaders who have been invited, but none of us who speak truth to power as a way of life have been invited, will be invited by the organizers, because those who only speak in times of comfort and convenience will fill the room. And also, it is notable about this case, Sam. Ramir Abu-Jamal was a criminal defendant. We as a people have a right to support any side of an issue that we believe is right and just. Isn't it interesting that the killer of Trayvon Martin had people sending money to him and defending his right to stand his ground? And this recent man, they can publicly declare that they are supporting these people, but then they would protest against an attorney who extended the constitutional right to a criminal defendant to be represented.
Yeah.
That is a hypocritical imbalance.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe that this one instance, this black mark, quote unquote, on Coons' voting record is going to change the taste in the black community's mouths?
I don't believe it will change the taste in the black community's mouth, because there are so many in position of leadership who will be discharged immediately to minimize
the conversation.
Impact. However, I think on closer scrutiny, usually where there's smoke, there's fire, and a person. I think he's a nice man. He is a minister also of the gospel. However, usually where there's smoke, there's fire, and I think the deeper we dig, and the longer the story stays relevant and hot, I think we're going to find other issues and other concerns that we have not known about.
Pastor D, here's the part of this that bothers me. When a person is an attorney and they're a pastor, a religious official, I see them in the pulpits of the churches in my community. But then to have a retaliatory spirit against a man for defending somebody does not seem consistent with anything I've read in the Bible.
Absolutely, but we must, Sam. I agree with you that it is tragic when any pastor or church permits someone to stand in the pulpit, which is sacred ground, and use it as a platform to manipulate, cajole, attack, or harm any community, be it white, black, or Jewish or Hispanic. However, in my own experience recently, not too long ago, I went to a community meeting at one of the larger black churches in this city, and not only did a non-clergy person who was black stand in the pulpit and declare, we want to hear your mess, Pastor D, from the pulpit, the pastor stood up and joined him. So this is what I mean when I say that we must take the bloom and sweet pain of all folks who misuse and abuse these platforms for their design purpose.
All right, beloved. Thank you for calling, my brother.
Thank you.
Wow. There you have it. Always, Community Crossfire, I'd like to share some commentary, known and unknown, to bring to your attention. We have one more guest that I'd like to bring on tonight. We spoke early on the children being raised by substance abuse, or the children on substance abuse parents. And that was somewhat insightful, but we like to bring something positive also. So we have some playwriters, some actors that's going to be coming on next. They have a play coming to the city, I believe, on the 22nd. And the title is somewhat like the topic we discussed earlier, which is Young, Wild, and Out of Control. So stay tuned. When we be right back, we're going to give you some information on that play.
Oh crap, let me go.
It's me, Trap.
Trap, what? Are you following me?
Yes, I had to find you to tell you that I'm sorry. And I love you.
You love me. Are you serious? Love doesn't hurt.
Look, that's what I'm trying to tell you. Look, I didn't mean to hurt you the other night.
Listen, the only way I can get past what happened the other day is if you just stay away from me.
Look, come on. We both were just so drunk, and we both were so gone the other night.
No, we weren't drunk. You were drunk.
No. And my story is what we sticking with.
No, you were drunk and you kept touching me inappropriately, and I kept asking
You
you
kept asking me to keep going. It felt so good until you ain't never felt that way before.
No, you damn near raped me.
And this is our show, Young Wild Out of Control. March 22nd at 6 p.m. at Howard High School of Technology. We'd love for y'all to come check us out.
And you can order tickets at www.therightdecision.com.
And that is right with a W.
Again, welcome back to Community Crossfire. Your host for the night, Ugundi Jacobs. That was the young actors from the play Young, Wild, and Out of Control. That'll be coming up March the 22nd. Go out and support them. Some very good play, some acting in that play, and let's go out and support them. So, Stan, before we wrap up, is there anything you'd like to discuss?
I guess in conclusion, just reminding everybody that this whole issue is about the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice. And that's the organization that protects everybody's civil rights. Traditionally, the Republicans want it underfunded and understaffed so that civil rights aren't protected. The president's trying to get this entity strengthened so that everybody's civil rights can be protected.
Okay. Yeah, that's very important. Yeah, very important. But on another note, what's your day-to-day operations like? What do you do on a regular day in, day out schedule?
And it's so much going on locally, in the city, in the county, in the state, and throughout the country.
Yeah.
So I'm just mixed up in all kinds of stuff, man.
Okay.
It's gotten to the point where you're involved for so long that you have personal interaction over time where people need to tap into what you've lived through, what you know about, what you've done.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's one that we're going to try to take this last caller and get on out of here. You're the last caller for the night.
Well, I just had a question on, a lot of times we talk about, what's going on in the community and different issues. And as you guys said, the things that might happen tomorrow, you probably won't see a lot of black people down there because they're going on about their everyday life. But I just wish, a lot of times that when we go through these things, you guys would give us some information on what can we do. Like, is there a certain website we can go to for the civil rights in Delaware that we can, sign up for to try to get more information? Or what can be our next step? Now hang up and listen to your response.
All right, thank you for your call. Do you know of any?
Well, I mean, the critical thing you do when you have a position on a vote for an elected official, you call their office and you register your concerns. Mm-hmm. Because in this particular instance, the elected official felt that the concern in one direction was more important than the other. So folks who agree that the guy should have received the vote need to speak up, make those communications. So you call the Senate office. That's step number one. And when his phone has 1,000 phone calls a day, then he knows somebody cares.
Right.
And then he starts to think about the political ramifications of what he did. Right.
Okay.
So he may get another shot to redeem himself if President Obama stays strong. But sometimes when folks do what took place, folks back off
Okay.
You know, so I hope the president keeps moving forward.
All right. Well, again, thank you for tuning in. I'd like to thank everyone who sent me out some encouraging words last week, some constructive criticism, and your thoughts. And I really appreciate that. And thank you again, Stormer, for allowing me to host the show. Again, this show has been dedicated to my aunt, Paulette Jacobs. Love you, baby. PJ. You have a good evening.